Irashaimase. Hello and welcome to Valfaris' Kitchen. I'm your host, Chef Valfaris. It's time once again for Shoot 'em Up Saturday, and on the menu this week we have Valfaris Mecha Therion, a truly metal shoot 'em up. What kind of taste will it have? Let's get cooking and find out. From developer Still Mantis, Valfaris Mecha Therion originally released for the PC in November of 2023. Now in August of 2024, it's also released for all current major platforms, the Nintendo Switch, the PlayStation 4 and 5, and the Xbox. For our purposes today, we're looking at the PC version being played on a Steam Deck, which it performs beautifully on. So Valfaris Mecha Therion is the follow-up sequel to the original Valfaris, which was a run and gun. This title takes it into a horizontal shoot 'em up and does an excellent job of doing that. It has great controls and everything just feels so, well, metal with this one. But you also have a lot of wonderful stages that, although long, keep you engaged the whole time, as well as some great weapon customization and upgrades. So this is definitely an easy recommend from the chef, especially if you're a fan of the original or of metal shoot 'em ups. Finding ourselves at the main menu. So when we begin the game, we're taken to our game mode selection here, so you can choose either original or challenge. Challenge is a new mode that was added just this week to the PC version and would have launched with the console versions. It basically takes the game and reimagines a lot of your mechanics. So if you played the original and enjoyed it but were looking for a different kind of challenge, definitely come back to it and check out the challenge mode. For our purposes though, we will be going over the game in original mode. Once you select your original mode, you have these various save slots that you can choose between. It's possible to take a new game plus with these saves themselves. The saves are also very important, as a one complete run through of Valfaris Mecha Therion is going to take you a fair bit of time, at least probably about 2 hours to complete a run. So the stages are long, but like I said, they do keep you engaged. It's not one that bores you with the length of the stages. Once we start, for our purposes, we'll be starting a new game, and then you have your difficulty selection. We'll just keep things simple and go with the easiest one, Mortal. So there is definitely some story here, and it does play on a little bit from the original, so if you've played that, that'll help. For our purposes, we'll skip both that and the tutorial and dive right into the action. So we start with this awesome scene right here, and it kind of just sets the tone for this game itself. Also, I just wanted to say I love this low poly look that the game has. It really fits just the whole vibe that's going on here. So this is our mech, the Mecha Therion. Basically just like a metal version of the main protagonist in more ways than one. So we've got two main attacks. There's this melee sword as well as our destroyer, which is your long range attack. It is possible to get different types of weapons for both, so you'll want to keep your eyes out for those unlocks. Most of them do come up relatively straightforward and easy to find, but there are a few that are secrets. So one thing that's important, your two weapons do need to be used in conjunction with each other. So in the top left, we have our health as well as our energy for our weapons. So as you use both your main destroyer, your long-range weapon, and we also have an auxiliary weapon as well, which you start with this Seeking Missiles, those will deplete the energy that we have in that blue bar underneath our life. Picked up something that does give us an enhancement to our current equipment, the hypercores. These ones, this will change based off of the main weapon that you're equipped with. In this case, it does give us our orbitals that we have right now the ability to fire with us. So energy management really is a thing in this game, and so the energy is refilled by melee attacking enemies or enemy shots. Another thing that the melee does is that melee cancels out enemy bullets. You also get energy for your weapons by doing so. So that's very important. It's also possible to rotate the Mecha Therion so we're facing the back of the screen. So if you have enemies coming from the back, then you can handle them that way. So as the game is a 2.5D, we do sometimes get these scenes here where things are transitioned from looking straight on to more of an angled, almost isometric look, and that's one of the issues that I've kind of taken with the game. Is there are situations where that can go and make it pretty confusing to see where you're at in relation to enemies and shots, especially in a couple fights where that's very critical. So it's one of my minor complaints with the game itself. We find ourselves facing our first boss. So as I mentioned, one thing that's important is energy management. If you watch my blue meter there, as I'm firing on this boss, we're losing meter relatively quickly. So it's important to know where our meter's at and get in there, either deal melee to him directly or his tentacles, or these little spawns he sends our way to rebuild that meter and then take him out. So, being this game is metal, you definitely have that over-the-top gore and just the whole graphics. Throughout the course of the gameplay, we will also be finding other pieces of equipment in addition to weapons. In this case, this is the Electro Blast, so it replaces that homing missile attack that we saw. I'll go ahead and stick with homing attack for now, as I do prefer it between the two, but just note that I have a lot of options for customization with your builds themselves. So there's one more attack that we haven't covered with our Mecha Therion, and that's our boost and boost attack. So you can boost into enemies with, in this case, with this control scheme on the PC build using a Steam Deck, it's with the right trigger. That will use the meter in the top right, and as that refills, red means we can't use it, green we can use a half charge, and then we have the ability to use full charge. So I've used a couple of these checkpoints to this point, but this is the first checkpoint that we can actually land. Landing on this checkpoint takes us to this weapons upgrade screen, where we'll go over the last mechanic, which is actually showing us here tutorial wise. So we've got a blood gauge. As we defeat enemies, that fills, and every single time that gauge fills, we get blood metal tokens, which we can use to, well, it's all basically telling you here, upgrade our weapons. So we can upgrade our destroyer weapon, the Hell Wraith, which fires the souls of the dead, to a more powerful weapon, or we could choose to upgrade our melee sword or even our auxiliary blade Tempest. Then over here we can see we've got a couple more optional modules where we haven't found any yet, but by the time you finish the game, I think there's actually like at least 10, maybe 12 options there. So we will take this opportunity to upgrade more powerful weapon as well as increase shot size. Wonderful. We don't have enough blood metal to upgrade any further, so we just move on. You don't have to land on every checkpoint, so that's optional, but there are situations where it's nice to pause the action and take a look at both your current loadout as well as potentially maybe even set the game down to come back to at a later time. That's one thing that I do appreciate with the saves, is it's possible to do that. Here's an area where the boost is necessary to get through obstacles. You are invulnerable while boosting. In addition to that, you're basically dealing a critical hit when you hit enemies with that end strike for your boost. And that basically covers everything for Mecha Therion. It's definitely a game that's well worth playing if you like side-scrolling shoot-em-ups and are even looking for a challenge. In Mortal, the game is fairly easy and straightforward to get through, but there's a lot of gameplay here, and some of the bosses can be challenging. So even on the easiest difficulty, you will be challenged. So here is a secret that we can find. The game scroll starts for a moment, and we actually can pick up this, which is yet another module. So we could choose to equip this one. Sure, let's give this one a shot. The part of what I like about this title is just how committed they are to both the look of the game and the whole feel. So the soundtrack is definitely there for the metal. The game really embraces that 2.5D and looks great the whole time through. The stages are on the longer side. I don't think there's a single stage that takes less than 10 minutes to complete, save for maybe the final stage, but that's not necessarily a bad thing, as they keep the gameplay varied and interesting the whole way through. It's not like some games that have overly long stages and all they do is just bore you to death by repeating the same thing over and over again. You've got different segments of the stages, tons of boss fights throughout, and the boss fights themselves are also engaging and interesting with multiple phases that will keep things really interesting. We have yet another upgrade here. This is our first module. This one will allow us to do a charged attack using our melee. It's not one that I personally use that much. I did in my full playthroughs. I've usually swapped that one out, but this is the way that one works. You charge up your melee and bam, you throw a boomerang at the enemy. It can be effective. So there you have it. Valfaris, Mecha, Therion, served up for your enjoyment. Definitely, as I said, this game has a lot going on with it that I really enjoy. It's one that I recommend, both just the theming that it has as well as how well executed it feels everything is. But on the minus flavor, so with it embracing the 2.5D, there are some situations where, as I said, it changes perspective, and in some cases I felt that actually can be really problematic to deal with. So that's been my biggest issue there. But aside from that, there's not really much else I can say that's negative. The gameplay on this one, on the plus flavors, just feels really solid. It controls beautifully. You have lots of options for movement. There's great customization with both all the different weapons in the module, so you can change the gameplay. There's all the upgrading, which the Blood of Valfaris that we just picked up there is part of. As you upgrade your weapons to higher levels, you'll require those, so it's best to try and find those both in secret areas and certain areas throughout the course of a stage that will drop those. Especially compared to some of the games I played recently, like the one last week as well, just the controls on this one feel so excellent. Everything is really smooth, responsive, and just really polished, which you can appreciate for this kind of a shoot 'em up. And lastly, the game is just solidly metal. So if you like that theming especially, this one will definitely hit at the right spots for you. Alright, let's just about wrap it up for this week's episode of Shoot 'em Up Saturday. As always, I want to thank you so much for joining us. We hope you have a wonderful week yourself, and we look forward to seeing you again next time.